So, guys, I'm here today with Kessa. We're going to be talking about the UK budget 2021. It's just been announced, obviously. There's some key points in there which are instrumental, possibly to the housing market as it stands now. We're obviously going to have to wait to see what the Scottish Government's response is, because clearly housing policy lies under the Scottish Government in terms of the LBTT, Land and Buildings Transaction Tax. Oh, I've got it right.
Well done.
I usually just say stamp duty, but I know people get bent out of shape with that. So, I mean, initial reactions to the budget, Kessler, what are you thinking?
Yeah, hi Jim, hi everyone as well. I think it was great overall. I think it was very optimistic. Sure, we've got tough times ahead of us, but ultimately it looks like the government's trying to help us get out of the current situation that we're in. But yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with the budget. How do you feel?
Yeah. Obviously, devil's in the detail. I mean, corporation tax at 25% by 2023. That's the one that concerns me, because there's a lot of landlords out there are actually put all their properties into limited companies. So how's that going to affect them? I mean, I know there is. There's talk that there's a threshold somewhere in terms of profits. Is that right?
Yeah, so from what I've read so far is if your profits are below 50,000, it will still be the old 19% rate, and it'll increase. So the thoughts is to obviously kind of tax the bigger companies more than the smaller businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, I suppose we've got to pay some of these grants back in some weird form, don't we?
I know it'll be. I think I've got a funny feeling it's going to be tapered relief in some shape or form. So you're probably right. 19%, and then going up to, I think, is it 250,000 or thereabouts that they were talking about in terms of the 25% rate for bigger properties, bigger companies. There is something there anyway, where it goes a tapered amount up to the 25%. But all us rich landlords will have to pay 25%, won't we? As if I think everybody has an expectation that landlords are rolling in it.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah. But ultimately, obviously, it's another good thing. The personal level has been increased slightly as well, which I didn't expect to happen. So obviously, if landlords are going to be taking an income from their limited company, then they can potentially take a little bit more out than they were last year. So it's not all doom and gloom there.
Surprises, capital gains, not a mention.
No, yeah, I'm very surprised as well. I thought all the kind of the news reports prior to this was all going to be about how landlords were going to get hammered with capital gain tax. So it's interesting that they've not mentioned that.
Well, yourself. I mean, usually the first phase to that is let's leak it to the press and get them to get everybody to settle down with it first. And then once they're all settled down with it, it's like, well, it's a foregone conclusion. So there's never really an argument once it happened. But True. I'm really surprised. And I think I'll be cynical here, and I'll say this is going to come on later, and probably in the autumn budget. I think he's going to pop up with it later on. And just because we're all going, oh, we're surprised. Why has it not happened? Almost like an expectation now. So when it announces it in November, it's like, well, we expected that anyway. And he's got it over the threshold.
True.
How did that happen?
I know. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it will come sometime soon. And if you're right, probably it will be the autumn budget.
I think the one for me as well was the predictions about unemployment levels. Everybody's predicting over 11%, and they're saying it's going to be that, and they reckon it's probably going to be 6.5. That's quite encouraging. I mean, youth unemployment is obviously quite high. I think that's sitting at 14% just now, and under 25's level. So that's actually quite a challenge. But for them to come in and say 6.5, I mean, how do you think that'll affect the housing market? Where do you think it'll go from there?
Well, ultimately, it'll be positive for the housing market, both on, purchases and rentals as well. I think definitely is propped up just now with furlough. The fact that furlough has been extended until September is good news for many, that are relying on it, but potentially some worries there for me personally, thinking that, well, the government wouldn't extend it that far ahead if they wasn't thinking that these restrictions are going to last till potentially that long. So, maybe we're going to be in these restrictions for longer than we potentially think we are just now. But yeah,
that's a good point. That's a very good point. And the fact that could be extended because of that. I kind of thought they would do it for certain industries, but they seem to be doing it right across the board.
Yeah.
But do you think there might be a possibility that in the next 2 or 3 months, they're taking more a draconian attitude to look at business and say, well, you should actually be back at work. You shouldn't be doing that. So, there was an indication there about employing more people at HMRC, and more investigators as well for tax avoidance and tax evasion. So, is this something they're going to be looking at later on? The furlough scheme and how people were some people might have been abusing it. There's maybe an implication there as well in terms of that. So, I mean, he's confirmed that the furlough scheme's going to be again for 80% employees' wages, and it'll be extended to the end of September. Did they indicate? I think I picked up in the conversation they were talking about people that can't afford it. They wanted employers in certain months to contribute 10 and 20% of that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact details to hand just now, but I think it was kind of August time.
I think it was 10 in July and 20 in August.
That's right. Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah.
And devil's in the detail. How is that going to be measured? Whether it's relevant or not. I think that's the other thing. And the further 600 self-employed people will be eligible for access to the grants as it's widened. That's obviously got to be welcomed as well, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. So it is the SEISS scheme, which a lot of people haven't been able to claim so far. So it'll be interesting to see who will now be eligible for that, because there's many people that have fallen through the cracks, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, James. How are you? James, what's your thoughts on the budget itself? We'd be interested to know your thoughts as well. And 5% reduction in VAT for tourism, hospitality, and it will be extended for 6 months up to the end of September. Geez, is there any tourism or hospitality anyway? That's the thoughts on that. And when's that going to open back up? And how we're going to open that back up?
Yeah, well, staycations, I think, will definitely be a big thing this year. Speaking to a lot of holiday let providers, hospitality people and stuff like that, the 5% VAT is, been really great for them last year, and was really what was kind of keeping them going ultimately. Because although they were open with limited kind of amounts of people that could come in, it was really that was kind of able to keep them afloat. So it's good to see that that's being extended.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what about we talked about obviously the stamp duty in England, and they were going to continue to the end of June, and then the nil rate band was going to be set at 250,000, I think it was, after that until a period of time as well. So do you think the Scottish Government will follow suit then, or do you think they'll go a bit further?
It's hard to say. There's not been anything that's come out from the Scottish Government so far. And they'd announced already in January that they wasn't going to extend it, and they'd already kind of limited even the Help to Buy scheme going forward. And the First Home Fund has been limited as well, because their budget's been cut. So, it would be great to see if the Scottish Government did follow suit and announce something similar, even if it was the 250,000 like they did last time round, because that would still help the housing market ultimately. But I'm really not sure on that one, to be honest. What do you think, Jim?
I would hope they don't do the end of a cliff thing, because effectively the way the UK government's done this, it's still like end of a cliff. You're getting to the end of June, and then that's the end of that part, and then we're on to 250,000 from then on up to the end of another point, and then that's the end of it completely. I still think they should be doing everybody. It's maybe concluded missives up to the end of June will be okay just after concluding missives, just to get it after June onwards. But it's everybody up to the end of June, and that's it. Or everybody up to a finite point in time that's concluded missives, because concluded missives means you can't back out. You can't back out at all. So it's a done deal. It's only a matter of time and paperwork to get it over the line. So I think that's the fairer system for everybody, rather than actually just saying, the cliff edge sort of approach. So I'm hoping that the Scottish Government's going to announce something like that.
They should employ you, Jim, to kind of advise them, shouldn't they?
No. I've been there before with some of these things. There's other things as well. 400 million to help the arts venues in England reopen. Again, there'll be something obviously available, hopefully, for the Scottish market as well. From the Scottish Government, and only probably the next week or so will actually tell us what that's going to be. It's amazing to think, though, that the amount borrowed is comparable only to that of World War II. When you think about it, that's a lot of money. Is there anything in hindsight where you think we maybe shouldn't have done this, or we maybe shouldn't have done that?
Well, lots of things. I think I think some of the funding that was kind of available, especially where there wasn't any checks initially, bounce back loans, stuff like that. I'd imagine that would contribute to quite a lot of that
Yeah.
pot. But yeah, hindsight's a great thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, borrowing at 355 billion this year, and the borrowing will total 234 billion in 21-22. That's a lot of money. I can't even comprehend that money.
No, we can't.
You know how you kind of look at money and you think to yourself, you put that in the context of, well, how many houses will that be, or how many Ferraris that will be? It's like, that's just uncomprehendable. It's you wouldn't want to imagine what that's going to look like in terms of that. And
it'll be interesting to see what long-term effects that will have. Will we have inflation because of that? The amount that they've printed.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
Good news for first-time buyers, though. The 95% guaranteed.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody's actually on board with this yet, or do you think they've just said this and then if you run across to the Halifax and say, "Have you got this?" they'll go, "Nobody's told us."
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as what it was last time. First COVID, where the government basically just announced it on everybody, and the lenders weren't ready. So no, they've already spoke to some of the lenders. So we've already got Lloyd's, NatWest, Barclays, and HSBC that are on board, and I think other lenders will follow suit soon after.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How do you think that will affect the First Home Fund? That will probably come back in April, more than likely. The 25,000 up to every first-time buyer in Scotland.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great addition personally, because the First Home Fund, the pot has been limited this year, and my personal prediction would have been if there wasn't this new scheme, that the First Home Fund would probably finish by summer at the latest. So actually, I think it's going to be a welcome addition for first-time buyers ultimately.
It's getting first-time buyers on the property ladder, because at the end of the day, they're the lifeblood of our housing system. These are the people that go up and actually let upgraders upgrade to larger houses. We were having a discussion this morning on a live programme about, Fife homeowners. I don't know if you know, but Fife pensioner homeowners actually own £8.03 billion worth of property.
Wow.
That's just in Fife. 45,000
Amazing.
pensioner homeowners own, and about 34,000 of them are actually mortgage free. So basically, they're sitting on them. But the dilemma is, as people are living longer, therefore they've got to have the housing to accommodate for them to stay there, but they've not got anywhere to downgrade to, because the number of bungalows in the last 25 years has gone from 7% of the UK housing stock to getting built to 1% of the UK housing stock getting built. So there's, we've got a real housing crisis on our hands. I mean, that's another story, obviously, but I thought I would bring that in when we're talking about first-time buyers and how they get in, because it's all very well saying that people can get a bigger house, but if they've not got a house to go to, but there's no point. You could have all the funding of the day, but if we've not got enough houses, we've had it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim. And in a lot of areas, bungalows are in quite nice, desirable areas as well. So a lot of people have converted them nowadays, to kind of have, rooms upstairs, and there's a lot of, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how they can fill that gap.
So good news overall.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. You said about unemployment as well. There is schemes out there to help the unemployed. Obviously there will still be a lot of unemployment at the end of COVID, but we've got the Kickstart scheme. I've actually managed to take on somebody myself through that, which has been great for the person involved, a local Fifer as well. And there's going to be the apprentice scheme as well, which will kind of help people get jobs as well, I think, ultimately.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much for that. That's a roundup, guys. Thanks very much, Kesa Salami from Freedom Financial Mortgages. Thanks for coming on the show. And if you've got any further questions, guys, please feel free to put them in the comments and we'll answer them later on for you. Okay, bye for now.